to our interview questions. So Scott, just tell me your volleyball story from start to finish. When did you start playing? When did you start coaching? Just tell me about that path and that journey.
Yeah. Well, first off, Sarah, thanks for having me. I'm excited about spending these next few minutes with you and talking a little bit and learning from you also. I think it is in a journey, right? Whatever our paths and our lives have done along the way. I think that's the neat thing in the journey is there's been a lot of success, but a lot of failure and a lot of hopefully learning lessons along the way. And that's something that we try hard to talk about, the whole perspective of it within the program here at Pepperdine. But yeah, you don't get to reflect too often. And I think especially about years in the past, and I think it's fun to talk about players in the past and just thinking about you as a player, the passion and the determination and confidence that you had was pretty stinking special. And it wasn't a very long time that I was there as a volunteer, but just the time I had, it was a lot of fun coaching you and that team. And so I was very blessed to have that time and then to go back to Hawaii again. That was another stop. But let me just start, I guess, with family, Hawaii community culture, because that's really where it started, right? For those that know Hawaii, volleyball is just a really, really big part. And I live in Southern California now, which it's a really big part, but I just feel like you go to a picnic or a potluck somewhere at the park, there's a good chance that somebody brought a volleyball net. Right. And so that's kind of the fun part for me. I grew up in a athletic sporting family. I was the youngest of three boys. We did everything, right? We did soccer early on, and then we played baseball and basketball, and then volleyball was one of the last that we actually played organized. My dad played volleyball in high school, and so I was around it a lot, and around it with my brothers who I idolized a ton as they had their success in all these different sports. And I just wanted to catch up to them. I just wanted to, whatever it was, if we're playing baseball in our neighborhood, I would get in the itchy bushes to shag balls while they would play just to get one at bat, right? And one chance to prove myself. And I think that was one of the blessings of it all is I was always trying to catch up to some pretty athletic brothers and neighbors in our neighborhood, which I don't know if we'll come back to at some point, Sarah, but I think there's just something lost about that, which I get where clubs and organized sports and lessons are at now, but I would love to talk about that at some point, just the value of being a part of and wanting to be a part and having the street rules or the block rules, whatever sport it was, and to get your chance. And you don't know if there's going to be another chance of an at bat or the game that you're waiting for to play, 2-on-2, winner stays, loser goes on the beach, right? So, but that was a part of it. That was a part of the story. And for me, I think the first team I was on volleyball wise, besides like middle school, 1 week or 2 weeks of volleyball, the first organized team I was on was my freshman year for a club team, and then for high school, and already saw kind of what it took, and just fell in love with the sport. Loved basketball also in high school, and thought I would play basketball in college. And really the big separation was had some success in high school and then also nationally. And then my junior year, the summer after my junior year, I went to a basketball tournament. We took Hawaii's all-star basketball players, and I was fortunate to be a part of that team. And then we also took a club team and played volleyball nationals. And we played in the second division in Vegas. Tournament was the big time tournament. And we were about 500. We won and lost like every other match, right? Every other game. And 2 weeks later, I'm out in San Jose and playing in USA Volleyball Nationals, and we come in second. And we had a ton of success. So at that point, I decided that it was probably going to be volleyball in terms of the opportunities and the success I could have. So, and I love both of them. So it was a hard decision, but from there on, I think it helped me have a little more singular focus on trying to grow and trying to be my best. And at that point, my oldest brother, who had a huge impact and still does in what I've done as an athlete, but also as a coach. His name's Kevin Wong, and he, at that point, was starting. He finished college, had success, started playing professionally on the beach, and was having success on the beach too. So that I think helps a ton, right? Having a sibling or a really good friend or somebody that you can see that has done it at a high level, you can see a path and you can see that ability to succeed. So that vision was there and kind of cast for me. Went on to Pepperdine, had a great experience. Marv Dunphy's the coach. He was the coach then, and he's had such a huge impact in this program. And just I can go on and on about Marv and his impact in my life. And to be able to see him, I just saw him a few minutes ago, just to be able to see him and still see how he touches a ton of young people, but also coaches that are just wanting to grow their understanding of the game. After college, played a little bit overseas for a season, and then I made the transition to beach. Loved the beach game, loved the indoor game. Did have a little short stint with the US team and played World League matches and traveled to Brazil and playing against Jiba and all these great players, right? And then to see our national team have success in 2008 and win a gold, and to see a lot of the guys that I was on the team with in 2001. So that was a lot of fun to see. And then played on the beach a little bit, and didn't think I was going to get into coaching. I really thought, hey, I want to have impact in young people. My mom was a principal for over 20 years in Hawaii. I got to see that. I was a student at her school, and got to see how she interacted with teachers, how she led, how she interacted with students. And so I went back to school. I got my degree first in business, as I thought I was doing the responsible thing, doing something that could help find me a job down the road. But I went back to get my master's in counseling because I wanted to be around young people and to help them. And essentially that's what it was coming from. And then I started coaching and coached a club team, a 16 and under boys team out here and at SMBC. And then I quickly started coaching here at Pepperdine also. And this is just a couple of years after graduating, right? I graduated in 2001, 2004. I was starting this master's program, starting club coaching, and then also Marv Dunphy said, hey, why don't you come coach here also? So I started coaching here on the men's side at Pepperdine. Fell in love with coaching, right? Fell in love with the experience I had with the boys club team. I didn't know how quickly it was something that I just loved, being around a sport, but also having these relationships, which still keeps me in coaching. Those two things, right? Just loving the sport development and skill acquisition and tactics and team development and culture. But at the same time, the relationships, I think, is huge and something that I think a lot of people would go, hey, don't you feel like you wasted your time as a business student at Pepperdine, all those rigorous courses, all learning about companies and consulting and analyzing? Didn't you waste your time as a counselor, right? Getting your master's degree, spending all those hours. And I'd answer both have helped me a ton to be exactly where I'm at now. Because as we know, volleyball is great. It's wonderful. We have a lot of resources, but at the same time we don't, and we're kind of running our own companies in a sense, with the program. So I feel like I'm pretty equipped with that. And then on the counseling side of things, it's just, I don't know what else could help, but this is such a wonderful thing. I think that has helped me a lot
That's a
with
great
relationships.
parallel.
Yeah.
Just there's so much of coaching that is about mentorship, and counseling is just that. It's really being a mentor towards your athletes and being able to connect with them on a personal level, guide them in sports and in life. So that's a good parallel, and I think that definitely helped on your path. So as far as your influential coach, would you say it was Marv Dumphy or someone that
Yeah,
inspired you?
Sarah, I've been so stinking blessed with great people around me. And yeah, growing up in Hawaii, you know, the richness of one, volleyball, but also two, the richness of just wanting to help others. And so I started off early on with coaches that Tony Crabb, Olympic coach, Chris Crabb, really good coach. Scott Rigg, you know, national champ here at Pepperdine. So as a young player, those are my first coaches.
Yeah.
Bruce Blankenfeld, who is one of the master navigators for the Hokulea. Just these great coaches, and then to see players come back. My brother, right, Stein Metzger, Mike Lambert, these great players to be around us as a young 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old. And so
That's the
that was
best.
kind of,
Yeah.
the Hawaii experience. And then when I got to Pepperdine, same thing, right? I had Marv Dunphy, and he helped me not only become a great volleyball player, but also a great man, hopefully. And I attribute a lot of who I am to him. But then also professors. I got to know the head of the business department really well, Dr. Keith Whitney, and our president, Dr. Andy Benton. Just some great relationships, right? And then, you know, along the way, I had some great mentors, and some people that I would just lean on. And Dave Shoji, right? Spending 5 years with him, and seeing how he ran such a great program in this highly critical and beloved program, right? Where the state was analyzing everything that he did. So yeah, I feel really fortunate. Players I competed against on the AVP, you know, to be competing against them, and then to seeing what they're doing now. I mean, obviously, Karch Karai, right? He had a just huge impact in the game globally, but also to be able to see how he did things, to compete against him a little bit at the tail end of his career. And then also to see the great things he's doing with our women's national team. So it's been a lot of fun. I feel very blessed to be around a lot of great people. And then also I think here at Pepperdine, I think is a special place because you have Marcio Sicoli, who's done all kinds of things on the beach side of things. And Nina Matthews was before me, and she had all kinds of success, and Marv Dunphy, and now Jonathan Winder, right, is just taking over the program now. So yeah, it's hard to pinpoint, but there's been a lot of people that have had these positive voices in my life. And then I'd say also, and maybe not directly as a coach, but going back to my mom, Caroline Wong, who she kicked butt in Hawaii. She was a great principal, and She did a wonderful job. She was principal of the year nationally at one point. So she did a lot of good things. And then obviously my dad too, Spider Wong.
Yeah.
Um, just the contrast of what I think people are. My mom and dad were the perfect team. So
That's great. So I'll actually skip down because this is just a great segue to talk about um, how your culture and your team within a team, as far as how you've accumulated the success, but also been able to keep that drive and that passion year over year. And a lot of that comes from your team, right? Your team within a team, meaning the people around you that inspire you, the ones that can be honest with you, and the ones that can help you see the bigger picture of maybe what you're not seeing, help you with your blind spots in the game and in life. So, can you just take another moment to describe your team within a team, and who are they and how they have guided you?
yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if I'm gonna deviate too much like I already have, but yeah, if I do, just refocus my,
It's okay.
yeah. Um, First off, I think my relationship with my wife is wonderful. I've learned a ton. I grew up with boys. We grunted, we competed, we didn't say very many words, and so I attribute a lot of who I am now just our relationship and kind of working through things. Um, and now I'm coaching young ladies, right? Which there has to be an emphasis on communication and setting our vision and goal setting. And I think on both sides of things, but just the relational aspect of things got much better when my wife came into my life. So um, my staff, I've always been very fortunate with young people that on the court within our team or a little older with our staff that we've been able to be very collaborative, direct, and honest. And that's kind of something that in the interview process, I try hard to talk through a ton of things, but it always comes back to one, we have to keep on growing our culture. And two, I'm not always right. And we have to talk through whenever you think I'm not right. And so we're very open. And I feel like I've developed pretty good rapport. Right now, Blossom Sato, Steve Astor, and Cole Murray are on the staff, and they're wonderful. They're able to independently run all kinds of great volleyball drills and teach, but also um, we're meeting all the time about those things, but also just the direction volleyball wise, but also culturally we're going, which I think is really, really important. Um, and then other friendships, I think that's the other part of it. I don't spend a lot of time with a lot of people. I try to spend time with our inner circle of friends, and I think that's huge. I think COVID taught me about that a ton, actually, and I think it forced us, right, to
Right.
spend time with a small group of people, and just we loved it, but
Okay.
we didn't, right? We couldn't reach out to as many and spend less time with more people, which I feel is great. We were doing dinners and lunches and things at 3 other homes, and we
Like your
sometimes
little bubble. Yeah.
yeah, we
Yeah.
kind of created our own bubble, and sometimes as much as 4 or 5 times a week we would be
Wow.
together, which was kind of special too.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it really bonded you. Now, what, based on that, so the current dynamics of your team seem pretty great. You guys seem really bonded. Um, you should always be looking ahead and to improve that. So, what are some things that you're looking to improve within your team within a team?
Yeah. So first, looking back, I think we've had some amazing young ladies come into the program, and my goal and job is how do I just draw out that stuff that they have to add to the team. And that's kind of our talking point. Hey, every person, if we have 14 or 16 or 17, this coming year we have 16, every person adds to the program. And it's a part of the recruiting talk. We spend a ton of time, and it's very intentional, a ton of time talking about all the things about Pepperdine, good and bad, right? And when I say bad, it's perfect for me. There's not much bad. We don't have football. Like, that's one that people right away go, hey, I need a football school.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. If that's something that's important to them, then that's a bad thing for them. And so we communicate these things early and try to talk players out of coming here, and talk about the difficulty and obviously the amount of time we spend training and prepping and watching film and all the things that are important for young ladies to do to be great. But on top of that, we try hard to talk about, hey, the investment within the team and the cultural component is non-negotiable. It's something that we won't ever sacrifice for one world-class player. It just, that's not who we are. It's something that I'm not going to judge another program if they do it, because I think we're all trying to keep our jobs, and winning is a big part of that. But we've passed on a lot of players that just have decided that that's not as big of a thing for them. But usually what happens is they decide because we express and communicate the cultural component. So they kind of automatically sift themselves out of, the option of us going after them. So
how would you describe your team's culture?
Yeah, I would say one, very, very driven. Right now we've got, so we have 8 returnees, and this kind of breaks it down a little bit more, and 8 newcomers. Of the 8 newcomers, we have 6 freshmen, and 1 transfer and 1 player coming over from Beach. So right now, this last year, I felt like our team, the culture, the chemistry is just like very accepting of each other. Number one, we try hard to create an environment that people can be themselves. And hey, we don't all agree. Hey, there's 16 of us. We're going to have different political views, backgrounds, culturally. Our skin color is going to be different. Religion is going to be different. So there's all these big things that I mentioned, but also small things. And we try hard to create this environment that they feel comfortable, one, and then 2, they can get after it in every way, volleyball and then non-volleyball. And then our goals, I think, as coaches are just to come alongside of them and help them with those goals. So if you ask our players, I think their answer would be, how do your coaches play a role in your lives? It's more, I think, as, hey, we're going to teach, we're going to hold you accountable, and then we're going to encourage. And I don't know if this is the right time, but do you want to talk about mission statement? Or okay.
Yeah. So that all plays a role into your culture. So
yeah. So I'll circle back to the mission statement, but as far as the core values for our team, and this is something new that we're going to implement. We've talked about these, but we haven't assigned, and I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are on this too. But I feel like a freshman coming in versus a sophomore or junior or senior returning has less of a leadership role, but also less of a contribution, not because they're not able to, but just the reality of culture and learning is, see what we've been talking about for the last year or 2 years in the recruiting process, and then feel comfortable and then dive into it and grow, right? Those are kind of the steps I feel. But what I've done this year, which I feel is really important, because we have 8 returning and 8 new, is to set the tone and say, this is exactly who we are as a program, which I haven't done in the past,
Right.
specifically, and all coach led. I'm very collaborative, not only with my coaches, but with our players, because I just feel like, one, if players and coaches have the ability to have their input, there's more of an investment, there's more ownership, and there's this all-in approach, which we have, and that's kind of one of the coolest things right now.
Yeah.
So this is where I want feedback, but here are some of the big things for us in our core values. And what I've done is I've assigned a core value to each grade class based on where I think generally they need to be from what I've said.
Okay.
Follow me
Eager to
here.
hear it. Yeah.
Yeah. So just real simple, like freshmen, we want you to be joyful. We want you to have joy. Like that's a core value, is we want you to be joyful. How are you joyful? You need to be comfortable with who you are, communicate it, be comfortable with the people around you so you can be yourself. And I think joyful is different for every person, but I feel like I don't think you can do those things if you aren't comfortable with who you are and where you're at. So that's the first. Second, and there's obviously overlap. We don't want you to just be skipping around
Yeah. No.
in practice, right? The second is we value competitive hunger, right? Just getting in there, getting in the gym, grinding away, looking through the net, sometimes popping off a little in practice, right? Getting your teammates going, picking a player up. So there's more of a responsibility to start looking externally, but they're focusing a lot internally too, right? They're thinking about how I can make the team better, how I can make myself better. And that goes to the weight room. You know, we had a player this last year, Mad Dog Shields, that was the libero of the year. She was in the weight room like 4 or 5 days a week, every week. And she just grinded away. And so that's a part of it. Watching films a part of it. Talking to teammates and building relationships outside of the gym, having lunch, which now those relationships can hold some weight when it hits the fan, right? So that's the second. Third, love, which I feel like society, I feel like, has given it a soft meaning, which I feel like love is, it's selfless, it's out there, it's how can I help my teammates more? What's going to help this freshman coming in to realize their potential as a volleyball player? Can I help this freshman checking into a dorm with her baggage? There's a book that I loved, and I know this is skipping ahead a little bit, but it's called Captain's Class, and it talks about just the value of leadership on a team. And this is kind of the junior and senior core values. The senior core value would be service, right? Just taking care of people and helping people, and not because you have to, but because you want to. And going back to Captain's Class, I feel like that was one of the neatest things, hearing stories about leaders, senior leaders on national teams that have been around for a while, helping out a 19, 20-year-old on the US women's national team soccer. After traveling from the US to China to play in this international tournament, to get bags, their luggage, and deliver that luggage up to these rookies. You know, so anyways, those are some things that we value, and I'm interested to see how it goes. And it might be a little cheesy in terms of assigning the years to it, but it's a work in progress and something we've been talking about as a staff. Other things that we really value are gratitude, learning mentality, and iron sharpens iron, just helping each other out. My mission statement, and I don't know how this changes for the vision statement is just super simple. It's just love, sharpen, grow. I just for myself, but I want to do it and provide an atmosphere with the team is just to provide this loving atmosphere to help them just, whatever it is, if it's passing or if it's how they communicate to professors or if it's a relationship within a teammate, just to sharpen and help provide them with the right tools, and then to look back and see these small growths and celebrate them. But also, man, after 3, 4, 5 years of being here, that's one of the neatest things as a college coach is to look back and just go, man, I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
So that's my mission statement
I
in I
love
guess, in
that.
a nutshell.
I think a big part of you stating the whole idea of love on a team, I think a lot of that stems from our background in Hawaii. I grew up playing Hawaii volleyball as well. There's this love of volleyball and there's this love for the ohana, which is your family. And your team becomes that, your family. And so it's almost a familial relationship when you go back to the roots of where it started for you, which is also a really important core value of mine is love and passion on a team, because so much of that will drive not only the bond on the team, but also the transactional aspects of learning skills, is that you'll want to perform. You'll want to give your best because you love your teammates and you want them to succeed. And you also love your coach and you want them to be proud of you. And so it doesn't become a transactional relationship. It becomes more about the care and the heart of the team being centered on that genuine love and relationship, which is a really great core value and something that is also understated oftentimes in sports, because like you said, there's this whole cheesy aspect, but it's so much more important because it goes beyond what you're doing, but how you're doing it. If you're doing it out of love, it'll be genuine, and there's less attitude and airs and pride. So it overcomes all of that. I love that you've assigned, core values to different, I'll say, age groups or brackets, because it's important as a coach and someone that's a seasoned coach like yourself. You've seen the waves of freshmen coming in and how they grow as people. I think so much of the freshman year is about that. It's about identity. And it's about, I went from being the best player on my team and the leader as a senior in high school, and now I'm a freshman and I'm in a new place. I'm probably in a new state or a new city. And you forget to have that joy because you're in an uncomfortable environment that you haven't been in before. And so I think it's really important that you have emphasized the importance of being themselves and having joy and really just trying to find what it is about them that A, they love, and two, that the team loves, because that's also a discovery for the team, is like, wow, I really like this about this person. It's like a new player. And then what is there going to be their contribution? I think that leadership is really important, and servant leadership, like you mentioned, is really important on teams, especially at the higher levels, because that is a legacy leadership. When someone serves someone else, that person in turn is likely to serve someone else. And like you say, it's a ripple effect that will stand the test of time as it becomes a part of the culture. So that's very much a part of the culture of Pepperdine when you emphasize servant leadership. And so the younger generation can continue that on, and it'll be continued to be passed on. So I think that that's a really great core value. The dedication and the striving for excellence, that is always something that in team sports and at the higher levels, Division I volleyball, you want to win. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there's a way to get there. And then there's the way to get there, and then there's how to get there. And I think what you're emphasizing in your core values is the how, the really important part of who you want your players to be together, and then individually that is also so important. And that is so much about culture, is that it's always predicated on the personalities of each team, and each team is different. And someone, I mean, you've been a coach for decades now, and you know that each team is different. It could be one player that comes onto a team that has a strong personality, and it can change the whole team dynamic if it is not harnessed in a certain way that is productive. And so I think that is really important in establishing your culture, is that, you know, it changes and it adapts, but you have your core values as your guide.
It's
So
awesome.
I love it. I love your core values. And I think it's really important as a coach that you know your team, and you know the dynamics of seniors, juniors, freshmen, sophomores, and you even know the dynamics between starters and, you know, second team. And so these are all good ways to foster cohesion amongst them, regardless of their role, you know,
Yeah.
or where they fit, you know. So I think that's really good.
Yeah, I'll let you know how the assignment goes after this year, but I'm excited about it, and I think it like you said, it assigns a little more responsibility to each group, especially where they're at. So
Yeah, it's really important. I'm interested to see how it goes too. It's a very unique approach, something I haven't, you know, heard of or even considered. But like I said, it's important that I think it's something that comes from your tenure in coaching as well, is that you know that each level has something different to offer, and you want to speak strength into that. So I think that's really great.
awesome.
All right, let's get into leadership. So what is your approach to leadership? Like, what is most important to you in that leader follower relationship?
Yeah, I said it first. I think it's really important, and the way I do things is just very collaborative. Um, there obviously needs to be trust. There needs to be respect, mutual respect, both ways. Um, and then from there, with that trust and mutual respect, I think you can grow a relationship. If it's, you know, coach, head coach, assistant coach, or if it's player, um, player coach. But I just feel like that those things are non-negotiable, because then you build a relationship and you can actually dive into some things that matter and can affect the team. Um, at the end of the day, all decisions big are going to land on my shoulder, right? And maybe a bunch of small ones too that might turn bigger. But um, how how we how we work with our team, I think, is um, going back to the relational side of things. We spend a ton of time with each player, and that's why I think within our program, I would say players feel valued. Maybe not every player feels loved, even though we try to, but I feel like playing time and the amount of sets and the amount of time on the court sometimes is equated with love. But I feel like every player feels valued from this last year 1 to 15. And that's why, you know, the numbers game, we try not hard not to go much more than 16. So obviously time, you know, in the gym, communicating, talking, looking eye to eye with players. Um, but even outside the gym, not just on film, because I think it can just be always, like you said, transactional. We want to have meaningful conversations, and we feel like with our relationships, if we're building them the right way, we're able to know where they're at school wise, right? To understand, like, hey, how are you doing in stats, or how are you doing in AP Chem, right? And usually what happens is we know before the academic advisors. We know before sometimes our trainers that, hey, we have a player that has a little tweaked whatever, right? And we just try hard to let them know that if it's, you know, for a sports psych for mental health, or, you know, if it's a trainer to be able to stay healthy, or our strength coach, right? To do a little more of this and a little less of that. Or if it's with a professor. So those, I feel like the relational time that we spend, and sometimes it's formal, sometimes it's a scheduled thing, but most times, which I'm really proud of, is our girls just stop by and hang out. And at one point, it's a little bit of a mess back there, but I try hard to put up a lot of pictures in my office, but also make it comfortable and try to draw them in. Where we had a little coffee and tea bar there for a little bit. Just, hey, come up and make yourself a coffee or a tea or just hang, right? Because that relationship is a big thing that we value a ton. And we want them not to just hit 400 on the volleyball court and get all kinds of aces and play really well. But like you said, the how part, we just value the relational side of things. We value seeing their growth emotionally, seeing their growth as human beings, and helping with whatever our team wants to be helped with. So that's the leadership style that we have. And then from there, I think it's a lot of hard work and investment and tough stuff. But I think after that, there's a lot of trust and a lot of setting our players free, where we don't micromanage. We don't go to places and say, you cannot eat this, or you cannot do that. Like, there are team rules for some things, but there's a lot of trust. And I think it's been the years of players being really mature and also walking responsibly. But there'll be times where I ask, especially our seniors or captains, and hey, what do you guys think about practice tomorrow? Do we need another day off? Or hey, what do you like most about, passing? What 3 drills are your favorites that we've done? Because we try to change it up a little bit, right? Where there's this investment, this collaboration. And sometimes it's a little bit of, hey, I don't know, maybe guided discovery, where it's a little more like, hey, what do you think about this? And this is the reason I like it. Is it the same for you? So a lot of just open communication as we try to figure out what's best for this team this year.
And how much of that, so the concept of autonomy within even just like a really driven and systematic program within your practice, how much autonomy do your players have to practice leadership, as far as, like you said, maybe selecting a drill or initiating drills, or initiating a conversation with a captain to another player?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we try to build it in, and the biggest built in, besides the biggest built in time wise, is in 2 parts. So our practice block in the fall is about 10 to 12:30. And we always want, and sometimes we have students that are coming from class that finish at 9:50. So we try hard to build in time on the front end of practice, because our girls just love reps, right? They want to get more passing or more serving. So we usually, for 30 minutes, so we'll start practice at 10:30, but have the gym set up at 10. And then you see the leadership come out without even us around all the time, right? Where you have players go, hey, let's grab the catchets, let's set, we'll meet at 9:55 and the gym's ready, and we'll just rep out 200 balls, right? Or serving, or whatever they're working on. The next thing is, I guess there's 3 things built in. The next thing is we have our young ladies do like a pre-practice. So before we start, or it's the start of practice, we have them talk through a quote that we have on the board, and then also write up their 1 or 2 goals. And it used to be skill-based goals, but we've changed it, and we do 1 skill-based and 1, I don't know if it's an adjective or emotional expression or whatever it is they want. And I just describe it as a emotional place they want to be at, if it's confidence or if it's resilience or whatever it is in practice. And then the third is when we're playing 6-on-6, we try as much as possible to play realistic volleyball, right? And within some drills, it gets a little complicated sometimes, but we try to keep it simple and try to give them the chance to call their own timeouts, or we will call them and either interject or give them space. And it's probably happens too often, but I'd rather err on that side than less often. And early on, it was, you guys, silence is okay.
Yeah.
If you guys all are saying something that means nothing, silence is better.
Yeah.
It's better to look at somebody and go, Sarah, you're going to crush this next ball.
Right.
Right. Or whatever the simple phrase is. Or
Right.
if there is something, hey, you guys, we gotta pass a little better. Let's clean up our serve receive.
Right.
So I guess those are the areas, but along the way, practice when we're in the heat of it isn't always, I guess, the best time for suggestions or other conversations about leadership. I think those are times to apply it. I think the pre-practice and post-practice are big ones. We'll have players that have been around come up to me and say, hey, I just want you to know we're going through a little something with this group of players. We got it handled, but just want to give you a heads up. Or, hey, any suggestions on how I approach this player because of X, Y, and Z, right? And I think that's the neat part where I value a ton, because it's going back to it, relationships, if they're good, it can stand all kinds of pressure. And as we know in sports, if there's a high pressure or something that needs to be changed and it's significant, it's not going to just be one little word or something during practice that's said. It needs to be resolved in deeper and more meaningful ways outside of practice, because nobody ever wants to be attacked verbally in practice. So
I think it's really important that you build that unstructured and also intentional time into your practice. So much of what was missed, I think, in my generation of playing, and even playing at a high level, is the stress associated with being a student athlete in college, and all the adjustments and your social, personal, your mental health, right? So that's a big concept now that is getting a lot more attention, especially for athletes, because it's often overlooked. So having autonomy, being able to have unstructured time in your practices, as well as goal setting, a personal goal, is immensely important. Having that emotional goal and just the mental state of mind that you want to aspire to be in, I think is really important for your players. So I applaud you on that. Good job. That is really important. And I'm really happy to hear that your program is taking that right step and being reactive to what is actually happening in society, and so much stress outside of just what's happening on the court. And so I think it's really important.
Yeah, and this is kind of digressing a little bit, but I love coaching this group, not only at Pepperdine, but just this generation, so to say, because I feel like there's a lot of coaches that they just don't make them like they used to, or they're not tough enough, and I just feel like we don't need to yell and scream more. We don't need to make them run more. We don't need to punish or penalize. And I was very, very fortunate with this, with Marv and the coaches I had. We just got to meet them where they're at. And it's awesome there's more questions. It's awesome they want to know why. It's awesome why they want to invest such a big part of their lives, and they just want to be a little more understanding of it, which I think is amazing. So it's been a neat thing, and I can't say I get all credit for this. Obviously the coaches that have been a part of this program, but also Pepperdine's pretty stinking special that our leadership, Dr. Steve Potts, and every other person that's been a part of support staffs along the way. We're going to have 3 sports psychs here for a pretty small department. No football.
Amazing.
And yeah, it's something I think everybody's understanding the need for.
Right.
But I feel like Pepperdine's been ahead of the game with that. And so I've been fortunate to grow up in this environment.
Yeah, and I think we can get back to this kind of topic in our coaching in the 21st century category, because the game has just changed. It's different. The whole dynamic of sports is different. And I think it's really important that you address that. So I just kind of want to tap into your volleyball IQ for a moment, in regards to your systems and then going into specific skills, just so that our coaches can get some high level learning as far as the skills and the game are concerned. So can you just tell me about your offensive system and what are the most important components?
Yeah, and this might be a little bit of I don't know, not a cop out, but I want the best players on the court, right? And I'll figure out a system. And I think this is where Dave Shoji was brilliant in coming up with different systems. And I don't know exactly his process, but what I learned from it is you put the best players, the best athletes, the best group of people, and it's not just how high they can jump or what they can do, but it's how the team performs and reacts. So that's essentially what we're trying to do here. We have run a 5-1 pretty traditional system over the last few years. I'm not opposed to a 6-2, which I don't know the group of listeners, but I think just the explanation, right? 1 setter, 5 hitters, that's where you get 5-1 from, and then 6 front row hitters and 2 setters. So essentially the setters come out in the front row. So it's something I've actually given my team a heads up on. We may do that this year. We have a really talented group of returnees, but also we have Prep Volley, one of the publications, just ranked our recruiting class really high. We have the 13th, we have the 50th, just 5 players in the top 150.
If I may interject here too. So upon your decision making to possibly run a 6-2, or maybe you're going to be running a 6-2 this year, is that predicated on the skills of your setters or the skills of your hitters?
Yeah, so for both, for sure. I don't want to just put somebody in to put somebody in, right? We want to win. So if we have essentially with 15 subs, which is a lot, and that's what we get nowadays, which that's another subject, but I'd rather go less subs, more like the men's game, more internationally, which is 6 subs. But we're here and we have a lot of subs and we can use those subs. So essentially we need to have 2 front row or 2 6 rotation outsides to be able to do this, to be able to run a 6-2. Players we have are very proven. Players we have coming in, we feel are proven, but they haven't played college volleyball yet. So that's where the hesitation. I just don't want to commit to something without seeing it, trying it as many times as we can to see what looks best. Essentially what we're trying to do, I mean, it sounds really simple, but we're trying to score as much as possible, right? Backing out of that a little bit more, we're trying to side out, and we try to put these standards on our program. And the standards come in where we want to be siding out at 67%, which We look at every serve that comes our way, we stat it, right? And there's all this information out there. And I think we're going to talk about that also a little bit. But you have all this information. You have information by rotation. You have information by who passes by rotation and what system you're running. So there's all this information, and it's all good. It's really good to have that stuff. If we spend a lot of time just our heads only in that information, what happens is we're not looking around, we're not seeing how players are reacting, because we want to just not treat them like robots and they're not going to change. Players change, and that's our job, is not only to teach them skill but also to help get the most out of them as competitors and as teammates and as humans. So to answer that question, we use information a ton, but we also want to understand our soulful, live, compassionate people are also growing every day too. So
that's then
to answer,
relates to the instincts versus
yeah,
statistics. So as coaches, I feel like we're often like, you can look at a player and be like, well, she's hitting a, an outside, she's hitting, above 300. That's great. But then you also have another outside that, is a little bit more instinctual. That that her volleyball IQ might be a little higher, and the high statistics could just be this game. So, as coaches, how do you navigate that when you are caught between the instincts and information?
yeah. So first off, for myself, I try to dive into the stats and try to, and some things you just can't run away from, even though you feel like it's not the case. But what's a good example of that is maybe how a player performs in the red zone from 20 and on, right? Where you just might have this, hey, we just need to have her on the court, but if it shows that we're not winning because of that red zone performance, it's something we will need to have to make a decision on this information and how we apply it during the games, and then kind of see what happens in the reaction to the team, right? One thing that's really interesting, we have a young lady in our team that has broken our school ace record. Like, just, she shattered it. She's got another year left. She's doing really, really good things, and not just serving, but also playing the game. She's a two-time All-American. Her name's Rachel Aarons. And one of the things we're doing, and it's a lot of numbers driven, but it's coupled with, we just need to serve it in more. So we look at every time we go back and serve, we want to score as a team at 45%, right? So there's this information that if we're 2% better than the other team, we're winning 99% of the time, right? Yeah. And that's just numbers and information, but you back out of it a little bit. How can we help us in rotation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? And that's serving the ball, receiving the ball, every part of the game. But we try to break it down as much as possible. And even though Rachel's score is at 46%, which is higher than our standard of 45, she needs to serve the ball in more. And so we are changing her serve, and not dramatically, but we're changing it to have her maybe get a few less aces and more in, which helps the team get more points. And to her credit, selflessly, she said, I want to help the team. I want to do what's going to be best. And she'll still get a bunch of aces. Right. But that's, I guess, one of the things that we're using this data, but also know it's the right thing to do as a coach too.
That's great. So tell me about your defense, your defensive system.
Yeah, so we're in a perimeter read defense, and then same for blocking. We're a read blocking team. We make dynamic moves. A lot of people call them swing blocks. I don't like talking about swinging, because for me, it's not the value on your arms, but more this dynamic athletic move, and maybe even abbreviated. I don't know if we were doing that yet, Sarah, when I was out at Hawaii with you, but
It was a little bit of both. I feel like I
yeah,
was one of the only ones that were really hard on swing blocking because when I transferred there, I came from the Pac-10 and
yep,
everyone was swing blocking in the Pac-10 back when it was the Pac-10. And
yeah,
our coach was heavy on emphasizing that dramatic arm swing. And so it became an abbreviated swing block for me
okay,
when I got to Hawaii because we were a little bit more old school
yeah,
in the way that we approached that.
yeah. So for me, the blocking component, we and defense, we want to use our ability to read the game, right? So it's not just player is sitting here for this. We try to teach, train, equip, and then rep out, and then same thing, teach, train, equip, and rep out with our players. And we even break it down in the sense where it's not uncommon, right? It's just they get to see it in practice on a rolling TV that's delayed a little bit, that they get to see what they're doing. So they fully understand. They're not guessing like, was that a good rep? Was that not a good rep? Right. So we try to help them read the game and to see what they're looking at and to help them understand those things quicker and try to expedite the process of learning. Um, and then from there, it's a lot of that where this is our base, which is a perimeter where we make dynamic moves blocking defensively. There's a lot of range for each player, but we also have like, okay, that is your ball, to define the role a little bit more. If there's teams that are heavy tipping short line or heavy hitting sharp, we will change, and that's a part of our system, is we'll take away team strengths, which I feel like is a big thing, and our team just embraces and loves. They love the scouting report. They love getting that information and going, okay, I'm gonna drop in for the sharp angle block. So that's part of the neat thing. Early on, I kind of questioned that because I think there is a value on, this is who we are. Let's see if teams can beat us, which we still have that, and we never want to take away from our training time and just start thinking opponent. So how we phase it in is really the day before our game, we watch a team, we watch hitters, we watch servers, and then how the setter dumps or how she sets. And then the day of, we get more specific and watch more rotational and any other things that we need to see on that team that might be a little different. So we try to just condense it down and do 2 20-minute sessions the day before, the day of, just to help our team get a grasp on it, but not to be just like, oh, we got to do this. No, we play volleyball with these small minor adjustments, which our team is doing really wonderfully now.
Yeah, exactly. That's a part of the 21st century. Like I said, the scouting reports, the amount of information, and I mean, we'll just jump right into that. So how do you use technology to your advantage in the way that you coach and you scout? And I'm sure there's even an incorporation within practice. There's all kinds of gadgets and things that help now. So can you just dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, we keep it pretty simple. I mean, the video we talked about while practice is happening, and we don't get to do that all the time, but we'll have a camera or iPad just right next to somebody with a TV 10 feet away, and they can see what their passing angle is like, or and it's more technique things as opposed to effort, or what their eyes were looking at when they're playing defense, or what their eyes were looking at when they're blocking. So there's that very that feedback that happens right away, because we all know feedback is the best way for growth to happen, for learning to happen. And there's verbal feedback, but also the visual of them seeing themselves do it is just huge. So the verbal feedback, obviously from coaches, are really, really important too, for us to keep it simple. Same thing. We try hard to just make things very, very simple, and the opposite would be complex and a lot of words. We try to just use few words and concepts and chunking of information that is very, very simple. The next that they would do in terms of technology would just be a system we use that they get to watch every practice and every match, and skills are broken down so they get to see their plays pretty quickly. And the neatest thing about kind of this technology is there's an aspect to having them timestamp a play and write a message to the whole team, to one of their teammates, hey, great play on this. Or to the middles, they could say for the setter, like, hey, let's keep the 3 at this distance and speed. Or to the coaches, hey coach, what do you think about this? I liked it. So they can message, and there's this communication which makes it ultra efficient. Just
Through like an
instead of
app or
so it's volley metrics and volley station are 2 big ones that we use. And yeah, it's a cloud-based website that you go onto, and just it's almost every program, and varying, almost every program has it, but there's varying degrees of usage, but also I guess the tier of what service you're getting. So we value it a ton. Our players, after most practices, you see these little red triangles at the bottom with just hundreds of messages.
wow,
And
really
and it's really cool because they are invested, and that helps us. You know, we watch film with them, but the reality is we can't watch film with them an hour each day, each person, right?
right.
So we just try to make it really efficient in their time, and it's crazy. Sometimes
Yeah,
pretty quickly after practice is up, and they're clicking through it, and you already see all these messages, which
that's amazing.
yeah, and even to the point when we first started getting it going and started changing culture, because my first 3 years, Sarah, were not easy. We were about a 500 team. There was a transition from different coaches, and the 3 coaches, Nina to Troy Tanner to myself, were very, very different. And just how we did things and the players we recruited and all that stuff just made it really tough for our program for the first couple of years. And how do you instill, because it's easy now, like maintaining and growing, I think, is easy compared to how do you build, because that's where I think it's tough. But the value of a player independently just diving in and trying to learn and grow and showing the effort and doing what it takes, right? We're all happy coaches and excited about that. But I just remember the first time that one of our players in study hall got caught for watching, this volumetrics. And
Oh my
I,
God.
had to kind of play it cool with our, my boss, but I
Like,
just
come
was kind of
on,
fist pumping
it's
inside. Yeah.
all productive, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Studying, it can be, volleyball or whatever subject they're in. It's all productive. I think that it's interesting though, the importance and the emphasis on technology now in sports, right? I grew up in an era where we just relied on ourselves and our coaches, and it's advanced the game so much.
Yeah.
I mean, just the level that they're playing at now, I think it comes back to the ability to evaluate ourselves through film, through technology, and being able to deep dive into looking at your arm swing. Before, all I had is someone's opinion, that you have a funny arm swing, and you're like, okay, but how? I don't understand what I'm doing,
Yeah.
because you don't have that outside perspective. And I think that technology is so important. It has advanced the game too. But what I also want to talk about is, how has it hindered, maybe not the game, but how has it hindered people, and what differences are you seeing now with athletes with the influence of, technology, social media, just in general, the social emphasis on how technology influences our everyday life.
Yeah, I'll start in the coaching technology area because I think it's true, right? It's if you are just adding and looking at numbers, and you're analyzing, and it becomes this quantitative thing, right? I think all of a sudden it can make players become a number, and just a hitting percentage and right. It devalues them as just volleyball players and what they do for you, which I think is a slippery slope. Obviously, we want to get the most out of our players, but we also know that it's not just volleyball players. They're human beings that have so much going on. They're so bright and gifted and able to do so much. So that's the first for me. I think this also goes into the intuition, the gut feeling of coaches. Is just so many times I think coaches rely, and I think there's a lot of good stuff, and that's why it's there, but just rely on whatever it is. Hey, we've reached our jump max, right? We wear these little jump counters and we've reached our jump max. We have to shut it down. And I think there is some value to that, but I think it's a good guide of information that we can use to help us stay healthy, safe. But we also want to push them at times to go a little harder, because toughness wins games sometimes, right? Without jeopardizing injury, and maybe the next day taking a lot less jumps or maybe no jumps at all. But I just feel like hard and fast things, rules can be tough in a lot of ways with technology. As far as culturally, it's I have a 8 and 11-year-old, and I'm on it. I'm addicted to my phone, right? And I'm not on it that much, but the reality is I have it in my pocket and it goes with me everywhere. And same thing for, our college girls. I feel like, I don't know if I have jade lenses, but I feel like they're pretty good and not being on it all the time. They're not trying to look for all these NIL deals, right? Which are kind of the next wave of things. And part of that is you have to build your fan base and all this stuff. So I think we're pretty fortunate that we draw a group of people that care about human relationships, face to face, in person, diving in, going to get a Pazuki from BJ's, right? Doing those things, getting boba, hanging out. And I think it's maybe because of the people we draw to Pepperdine as a whole, but also maybe our volleyball program. There are challenges, and our players face those challenges too, though. And I think and I'm not the expert on this, so I won't talk about it much, but value and self-worth, I think, are linked, what I've seen sometimes, to the amount of likes or responses they get in social media, which is obviously dangerous because it's fake, right? It's not real. So we try hard not to bash social media, because I think it's a part of our culture, and it's something that we all need to do a little bit of, and it's just how much time do we need to spend on it. So that's my very uninformed opinion. And we try hard with our two kids. We try is the key word, to not have them plugged in on iPads, on technology all the time, but it's hard. And my daughter's one of,
and you got to adapt.
Yeah.
Adapting is key to survival. And so I think that, you got to, like you said, you got to take a healthy human approach to it. It's an assistive device. It's not your all in all and everything. And so I think it's really important for coaches to address it. I think it's important for coaches to have standards amongst their teams as far as their social media consumption. And like you said, their value is more important between the relationships on the team than with their phones or their social media accounts. So
Yeah.
that's really great. How has COVID shaped the way in which you approach your seasons now? And, it's been a tough 2 years. I know we're kind of coming out of it, but I'm sure there's a lot that has changed as far as how you plan.
Yeah. Um, I don't know how much it's changed. I guess obviously we have to be flexible. I think that was the one of the biggest curveballs for us, is just we've had to learn how to adapt and to be able to change things in the fly and be okay with it. So that's probably the biggest for myself and for the team. Because early on, right, we were practicing on the grass here at Pepperdine because it was unhealthy to be practicing indoors, right? Like there was that whole thing, and we were fighting and we were trying to change things. And our team wanted to, we had 3 players on the grass. That was our first practice during that COVID fall. And some players weren't back yet. Some weren't out of their onboarding to be cleared. So there was just this high demand of being flexible and doing things that we didn't want to do, right? Having something stuck up your nose and, doing that every other day. And I think there's obviously this sense of just gratitude for what we have and the normalcy we have. And I think everybody can say that. The second thing, I guess, that happened during our COVID, and I'm trying hard to think of other things, but we started, and maybe this is me and just not wanting to sit still, but we started diving into books that our team led. Essentially, I thought at first it was going to be us as coaches, and there was some of that. But eventually what happened was there were issues that were coming up in the world that were big. And then we're going through COVID and the fear and the anxiety and the restriction of people and the lack of normalcy. And we just needed to go through something as a group. So we went through, I believe it was 2 Brene Brown books. And then started off with her TED Talk, and just, man, it was amazing. It was one of the highlights for me in my coaching, but also during COVID. It just was something that I look forward to, and just seeing our diversity in our group and seeing that come alive during all kinds of things that were coming up, and then talking through them. And I think that's the beauty of culture. That's one of the things I'm most proud of, is just seeing these differing opinions during like big issues, and to see not the team come to a solution on who's right and who's wrong, but more just, let's talk about it and let's understand each other more. And so that was awesome.
What are those books that you can recommend for
Daring Greatly
coaches, and then just books that you would recommend?
Yeah, I'd say anything Brene Brown is great. Daring Greatly was a really good one. Legacy was one that we did. We talked about a little bit, and we've implemented in our team, and it's about the All Blacks. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it just talks about this rich culture, that you have this rugby team, the All Blacks, the success they had, and all they invested, each person invested into it. And to sum it up, I guess the best idea is they wanted to leave their jerseys in a better place than they received them. So when a player, maybe, and I don't know how long the history was of the All Blacks, but it's this great long history. A player comes in, picks up this jersey, puts it on, and it's like, I better do this, not just for me, not just for this team, but for the history of the team. So we actually started a jersey ceremony, which is a big thing in Legacy, the book. Last year after COVID, it started opening up. We have our alums come back and talk about what it means to be a Wave, and to present the team with this year's jersey. And I didn't know how it was going to go, but I mean, as I'm talking about it, it kind of gives me some chicken skin.
It's amazing.
Yeah, but it was really, really neat because you hear stories in history, and there's always this sense of it goes by so fast. And that's the thing that I think our team has tried to embrace as much as they can as 18, 19, 20-year olds. But pretty cool. And that is 100% from the book Legacy.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I wanted to speak on that just really quickly. You know, I think it's really important as coaches, no matter where you are and how long you've been coaching, but just the idea of legacy and like having your alumni come back and be involved still in the program, you know, that really speaks to the multi-level leadership within your program, because having different generations of leadership. And you know, Hawaii volleyball, we get together every year and have our alumni matches and stuff like that. And it's not something that I'm privy to. I don't know if other universities do that, but something I always appreciated about the culture of Hawaii volleyball is having that generational legacy and leadership, that we can share our stories and our experiences, and also have the commonality of what we shared together, which is the, you know, University of Hawaii volleyball. And for your team, it'll be Pepperdine. Those girls will be connected through generations just by keeping them involved. So I think that's really great. We'll get to the closing question. We are running really long. I'm sorry for taking up too much of your time.
No way. I've enjoyed this.
So what is the future of volleyball? So knowing how the game has evolved over time, what do you see changing in the future? Do you see a professional league in the US possibly? What do you think about that?
Yeah, in terms of the game, it's so young still, and I think that's kind of the coolest thing is it's changing so much, and I think it's about 130 years old, a little less maybe, and to see it, you know, from Boston of all places, Massachusetts, being born to beach volleyball being born in Hawaii, which I think is also really neat. But there's been some big jumps in the game, I think, in terms of the BIC and different things along the way, right? The faster offenses and jump serving, and then now maybe not as much jump serving, more jump floats, but efficiencies and contacts and the ability to hit it harder, but like really, really efficient. I don't know what the future is. I am amazed, just like you are, in terms of this group of young people and their ability to learn. There's so much at their disposal, right? There's so much information. There's so many matches on YouTube. There's I have YouTube TV and I record volleyball matches, and there's just so much, and my daughter is watching it right at 11
right.
and seeing what's going on. So there's just so much more available to them, and I think that's the neatest thing. You see these small nuances where players are about to hit a BIC and then set an outside player, so there's a little more trickery going on. But I think just the efficiency, players playing at this high level, whatever the skill is, and doing it, if it's basketball or volleyball or football, that's the neat thing. I think that the best part of sport is just the refocusing, the coming together, and bringing these collective talents and diverse backgrounds to accomplish one goal, right? Which is to win a championship. So in the States, I think there's some great opportunities, and Athletes Unlimited has been around now for its second year in volleyball, and that's been neat to see their 5-week, 6-week season. There's been a lot of, I think, good traction that's been built. I think starting volleyball in the States, indoor volleyball and beach, I think is really tough to sustain itself financially. There's a group called Love that's starting to do some things, and they have the vision of a professional league. So it's been hard to have one. Now there's two that are popping up, and I think it's awesome. I think if there's a chance for more opportunities for young ladies or men to be able to play and in the States, man, I think there's some great things in store if that happens.
Yes, absolutely. And I just want to take a couple more minutes just to
Yeah.
dive into that concept. So you're coaching women. What what do you think the barriers are as far as these women continuing to play in the United States? So you get a lot of fans at your games. Hawaii gets a lot of fans at their games. I don't think it's a matter of fandom. Like you said, the financial aspects of volleyball are challenging as far as having a sustainable league. Do you think this goes back to the gender roles that society emphasizes as far as in sports?
So are you talking specifically how do you sustain a professional women's league?
Right. So it seems to be a barrier, right, for I mean any women's professional league, even the ones that do exist that are successful, the WNBA and soccer, you
Yeah.
know, they have their challenges because they're women. And but I always go back to, you know, why are we supported so much in college, but then the moment they step into the professional arena, it becomes a challenge or a barrier to be sustainable.
Yeah, I don't know. And this it'd be, and I'll take a stab at it, but it's a very unresearched understanding. But my opinion is just there's so many other sports that we're competing with, right? And I get the parallel of college women's volleyball, and Hawaii and Nebraska and maybe a couple others are just rare in the sense of the support. I don't know what that means for a different brand. So that's essentially, I think, what it would be, right? A different brand, the pro league, and maybe it's attached to these universities. Because I feel like there has to be more collaboration with existing fan bases, right? Like the
Exactly.
existing Hawaii would love to have, you know, alums back right after you're done, to have you back, and to have a few others back to represent them. But I don't know the business side of
Right.
sponsorships, and because ticket sales is one, but television time is another. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not my arena,
Yeah.
but I would
It's
love it. I
something that
would
I'm
love,
interested in, you know, just
yeah,
personally, right? You have a business background. My husband has a business background, something he speaks to often. He's like, why is there not a women's professional league?
yeah,
We have the greatest players in the world. Obviously, I mean, we just won the gold. And then even in college, like our players are highly sought overseas
yeah.
and they got to go overseas to play. And so I always, it's always something in the back of my mind, the consideration for the future of volleyball in a professional league, I think is the most logical next step. And I think that that is something I can look forward
Yeah. And if I can help,
to.
I'm there. Let me know how I
Absolutely.
can help.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Scott, thank you so much for your time, for your consideration. I just love this conversation, getting to know your program. And we wish you luck in this upcoming season. I look forward to hearing how everything goes as far as your implementation with your new core value system.
Awesome. Sarah, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Thank
And
you.
hopefully this helps a little bit.
Absolutely. You have a wonderful day. We'll keep in touch.
Okay. All
All
right.
right. Bye.
Bye.